News when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow.
Karen, nearly a month into a fragile ceasefire in the Middle East, the U.S. and Iran have been trading fire again. This morning, a relative calm has returned, but not before U.S. Central Command says the military fought off Iranian drones, missiles, and small armed boats as it guided two U.S.-flagged vessels through the Strait of Hormuz. The United Arab Emirates says it has also intercepted Iranian cruise missiles and taken a hit to its Fujairah port from an Iranian drone. We get more from Bloomberg's Jumana Bersachi in Dubai.
As a resident of the UAE, in the evening yesterday, we received multiple missile alert texts throughout the course of the night. This happened after an ADNOC tanker was reportedly targeted by an Iranian drone. And then also emerged in the evening that an Iranian drone had also managed to intercept UAE's air defense system and cause some damage at an oil exporting facility. And this is the first time we get such an incident in, as you say, the 4 weeks since the ceasefire.
Bloomberg's Jumana Bersachi reports all this is raising questions now about whether the ceasefire has been broken. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and Joint Chiefs Chairman Dan Kane are set to hold a news conference at the Pentagon later this morning at 8 a.m. Wall Street time. You can listen live on Bloomberg Radio or watch on the Bloomberg podcast page on YouTube.
Well, Nathan, Chevron says the conflict has forced the company and other oil majors to reduce Middle East production. CEO Mike Wirth says he's been warning the White House that supplies are tightening. He spoke to Bloomberg at the Milken Global Conference in Los Angeles.
My advice to the president really relates to energy markets, not to diplomacy and negotiations. And, I've advised people in the administration that the buffers in the system that help ensure supplies are available to markets are being drawn down. And what that does is it creates more upside price pressure, potentially more volatility and more risk.
And you can see our entire interview with Chevron CEO Mike Wirth and dozens of others from the Milken Global Conference. They're all on our new video experience on the Bloomberg Business app.
Karen, officials are investigating a shooting not far from the White House. The Secret Service says law enforcement shot an unidentified man near the Washington Monument after he opened fire on them. Secret Service Deputy Director Matt Quinn says agents were called about a suspicious person who appeared to be carrying a firearm.
Upon making contact, that individual fled briefly on foot, withdrew a firearm, and fired in the direction of our agents and officers. They returned fire and engaged. That individual was hit.
Secret Service Deputy Director Matt Quinn says a teenager was also shot but not seriously hurt. A motorcade with Vice President J.D. Vance had passed through the area shortly before the confrontation, but the Secret Service says there is no indication he was a target.
Nathan, Senate Republicans have unveiled their plans to pay for President Trump's immigration enforcement agenda for the rest of his term. The bills from the Homeland Security and Judiciary Committees would greenlight a combined $71.7 billion for immigration and customs enforcement and customs and border protection. The Secret Service would also receive $1 billion for security enhancements to the president's White House ballroom project. Republicans could move the bills through the Senate as soon as next week without Democratic votes under the budget reconciliation process.
Karen, some key elections are on the docket today. Ohio is holding statewide primaries, and a prominent ally of President Trump's running for an open governor's seat, and there are competitive races for the House and Senate as well. Bloomberg's Amy Morris reports from Washington.
The race to replace outgoing Republican Governor Mike DeWine includes Trump-backed tech entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy. The winner will face Dr. Amy Acton, who is unopposed for the Democratic nomination. In the Senate race, former Senator Sherrod Brown is running to reclaim his old job. He faces Ron Kincaid for the Democratic nomination. One of the notable House races features a crowded Republican field competing to take on 22-term incumbent Democrat Marcy Kaptur in the 9th Congressional District. In Washington, Amy Morris, Bloomberg Radio.
All right, Amy, thank you. Let's turn to the markets now, and futures are higher following yesterday's war-related declines. Still, the S&P 500 up more than 5% this year, while the Nasdaq is up almost 8%. Stuart Kaiser is head of U.S. equity trading strategy at Citi.
You know, on our estimates, retail is accounting for about 7.5% of equity trading volumes. That number was as high as 11 or 12 earlier in the year, and as high as 15 back in October. So retail is present, but I do think this is more institutional in the U.S., so hedge funds getting their risk up. And then, frankly, I think international investors have gravitated back towards the U.S., similar to the way they did last April.
And Citi's Stuart Kaiser also says better than expected earnings have helped fuel the market rally.
And Karen, Palantir is one of those companies that have topped earnings estimates and raised their revenue outlook for the year. However, in Palantir's case, the tech company also posted disappointing commercial sales in the U.S. for the first quarter. Stock is down more than 3%.
And that's news when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Karen Moscow.
I'm Nathan Hager, and this is Bloomberg.